time keep dancing forever, mate. Well, at least till I remember where I put my car.
What's happening, people? I'm DJ Graish, and in today's video we're making an old school 90s breakbeat hardcore tune. So let's get started, and the first thing I'm going to add is a breakbeat. The break I'm starting off with is the hot pants break, so I'll just drag that into the project, change the time stretching algorithm to complex and turn it down a bit. It's actually the second half of the hot pants break that I'm going to be using, so I'll just get rid of this first part. Before we chop this break, I'm just going to make sure that the kicks and snares are on the grid. So to do that, just double click the warp markers to turn them yellow and just move them onto the grid. I'm going to be chopping this break using this slice to MIDI feature. So just right click on the audio clip and choose slice to a new MIDI track. Now a drum rack appears with all the slices on it, and all we need to do is just tidy up the start and end point and make sure that they're clean. So just click this button over to the left, which will show you each sample, and just move the start and end point to tidy it up, and make sure that each one isn't bringing in anything from the next slice. One thing you always need to remember is to turn this loop length down to 0%, because if you leave that on, things start to sound really choppy and weird. I'm going to transpose this break up 3 semitones, which is something that I could have done before slicing it, but if you want to do it after, all you need to do is just go to these controls and transpose one slice up by 3 semitones, then right click it and choose copy value to siblings. So I'm going to add a compressor and just adjust the threshold, attack and release to taste. With drums, it's good to have a bit of a slower attack, which will let the transient through, but it's good to have a very quick release. So the best settings are just turn the threshold down until you're getting a few dB of gain reduction, put it on quite a slow attack and quite a fast release. Next, I'm going to add an EQ8, and what we're going to do is remove some dirty, unwanted frequencies from the break. So to do that, you just need to take one of these bell curves and boost it up to the maximum gain, and then move it around the frequency spectrum and just listen out for different frequencies. Some of them might sound pleasant, other ones not so much. So if you find a sound or a frequency that you don't like the sound of, just turn the Q knob up so that the frequency band narrows in and really just move it around a little bit. It's like fine-tuning a radio for my older viewers who remember the old school days of listening to the radio. You would really have to move the knob a tiny bit to the left and right to try and tune right in and get the best reception. Well, in this case, we're tuning in on that frequency, and when we find it, you just turn the gain all the way down or just a bit down, and you can cut out that dirty frequency. Whenever you use an EQ, you might be turning the volume up or down slightly on this track. So to do a true comparison of the before and after, what you can do is use this little gain control down here and look at the peak level beforehand, and then once you've got it gain matched, you can turn the EQ on and off, and you can truly hear how it sounds before and after adding this EQ. Within the drum rack, you've got this little mixer view, and what I like to do is just turn down the kick and snare of the break just a little bit, maybe around 5 dB. This will allow a bit more headroom because I will be layering an additional kick and snare. When choosing additional kicks and snares, you want to make sure you choose some nice punchy samples. So I've chosen this kick, and one thing I like to do is shorten it right down so it's quite a short sample and give it a little fade out at the end, and just make sure you turn it down to an appropriate level so it's just layered nicely with the break. Now I'm going to do the same with the snare. Just bring in a nice snare, shorten it down, turn it down a bit, layer it with the break, and together the kick and snare sound like this. And when they're layered with the break all together, it sounds like this. I like to have my project quite organized, so I'm just going to put the kick at the top, followed by the snare, and then the breaks. At this stage, I'm going to group everything together, so just click the first track and hold down Shift, and then click the last track, and then press Command and G to create a group, and I'm going to call it drums. One way that you can make your drums sound a bit more like a real drummer is to put them in a space together. So how do we do this? Well, you can create a room reverb using a send. By default, Ableton Live comes with a reverb on send A, so we're going to use that. But what I like to do is just put an EQ8 before the reverb and just make sure that no bass whatsoever is being sent to that reverb unit. Once you've got that set up, you can just go to the mixer view and just turn up send A on all of the tracks apart from the kick. And I'll just put a glue compressor onto the drums group, and this is going to help manage the peaks a little bit and just keep everything sounding cohesive and together. Now, you would be correct in assuming that a lot of people would add the bass next, but what I'm going to do is add some kind of melodic chords or something, just so that I know the chord structure of the track, and then I can write the bass line around that. So what I'm going to add is a pad. So I'm just typing pad into the search here and just having a look. And looking under simpler, I've found this pad. So I'm just going to drag that into the project. I'm going to need a MIDI clip to write the bass line into. So I'm just highlighting a section here and pressing Shift, Command and M to create a MIDI clip. To hear what you're doing, you need to press this little headphone symbol. And now when you click on the piano roll, you can hear the sample at all different pitches. So what I like to do is just click different notes and hear which ones sound good with this particular sample. And when you're happy with the notes that you've chosen, you can just do a little bit of processing on this. So I'm just going to add an EQ8 and take out the low end, do a little bit of compression, and I'm going to add a hybrid reverb and use the plate reverb setting. Now it's time to move on to the bass. For the bass, I'm going to be using an 808, so I'm just dragging a simpler into the project, and the next thing I'll do is type 808 into the search and find my 808 samples. The one I love to use is this super dope 808. Next, I'll put a tuner after the simpler and click on controls and just use the transpose and detune controls and press C on the MIDI keyboard, which is actually the A key on your computer keyboard, and just keep pressing that and keep playing with the detune and transpose until a C is a C. When making sub bass, it's a good idea to use a spectrum analyzer to see which range it's in. The reason you want to do this is because anything that's below around 40 Hz isn't really going to come through on most speakers. And anything that's above around 100 Hz is basically too high for sub bass. So you want your sub bass notes to be falling in that range between 40 and 100. Obviously, bass isn't just all about the sub. You want some lower mids in there as well. So to make that, what you can do is just duplicate your 808 channel and label one as 808 sub and the other one as 808 mid. Now, with the mid one, you can put a saturator on there so that it brings out the harmonics, and you want to high pass this so that it doesn't have any sub bass. So now you've got your 808 separated into two layers. One of them is taking care of the sub bass, the other one is taking care of the mid bass. And you can experiment with adding all sorts of things to the mid bass, including chorus and reverb, etc. As long as you've high passed it, then you don't need to worry about there being any reverb on the sub bass, which is obviously something that you don't want. Once you're happy with your sub bass layer and your mid bass layer, you can group those together and just call it bass. The next element that I'm going to add to the tune is a cheesy rave piano. When it comes to this type of old school rave music, you don't want to use a high quality modern piano VST and play chords yourself, because it's just going to sound too high fidelity and too modern. What you want to do is find a sample of one chord and put that into the simpler and then just play it at all different pitches. That's going to give you more of an old school rave sound. Once you've found your piano sample, just put it into the simpler, adjust the start and end points, create a MIDI clip, and just draw in some notes. After that, you can add some compression, some reverb, etc., and just get it sounding exactly how you want it. The next thing I want to add is this chord sound, which I'm going to use as another pad, but it's not really long enough to be used as a pad, so I'm going to need to loop part of the sample. So how do you do that? Well, you just drag the sample into simpler, and then turn on this loop function, and then here where it says loop 100%, just turn that down, and position the loop markers to part that you think would sound good looping over and over again seamlessly. And also you will need to use this fade function to try and make it loop as seamlessly as possible. This way you can draw in MIDI notes or play MIDI notes on your keyboard, and essentially they can go on for as long as you need them to. Now it's time to add the vocal sample, and I have found the most amazing vocal sample for this tune.
You guys gonna stop ever, or are you gonna keep dancing forever?
I'm keep dancing forever, me. Well, at least till I remember where I put my car.
So just like most of the sounds in this track, I've added some EQ to take the low end out, I've added some compression, some delay, and some reverb. And now it's the moment we've all been waiting for. Here is the finished track, and while that's playing, I'll put some time lapse of me doing the arrangement on the screen. If you've learned anything from this video, I'd really appreciate it if you could click the like button and subscribe to the channel. So here it is, here's the finished early 90s rave tune.
Are you gonna keep dancing forever? Yeah, man. Are you gonna keep dancing forever? Yeah, man. Are you gonna keep dancing forever? Yeah, man. Are you gonna keep dancing forever? Yeah, man.
I'm keep dancing forever, me. Well, at least till I remember where I put my car.
You guys have fun tonight?
I ain't got a worry in the world, mate.
guys have fun tonight?
I ain't got a worry in the world, mate.
If you want to learn how to make jungle, click this video on the left. And if you want to see my entire playlist of tutorials, here it is. I'm DJ Graish, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.